Welcome back, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about markets, economics and everything else in between. Now, if you are new here, make sure that you comment, like, subscribe. I do reply to every single comment. Believe it or not, I do read them all. I do reply to them all. I do keep the conversation going in the comment section. I know a lot of people neglect it, but I don't neglect it. I do listen to you all. I do reply to you all. So I really would encourage you to leave a comment. Now, over the past couple of weeks, I have been talking a hell of a lot in relation to fiscal dominance, the stock market, Trump, tariffs, China, etc., etc., etc. And I've been saying etc., etc., etc. a hell of a lot as well. So I need to kind of slow that down. But at the moment, I'm probably about 11 coffees in. So the caffeine is definitely flowing. And I just really want to talk about some things what are currently on my mind, what hopefully will give you some value just in relation to psychology, emotion, talking about the stock markets, etc. So first of all, I want to discuss what has currently been going on Instagram. Now, if you are new here, I'll give you the executive summary. I currently have a page what is called DC Economics, what currently has about 1.4 to 1.5 million followers. Now, that page over the past couple of weeks and months has been relatively shadow banned just in relation to talk about anything in relation to finance. Now, when I post anything, what is, let's say, a meme, or when I post a reel, or when I post anything, what is kind of, let's say, a highlighted quote in a book, then posts do exceptionally well. And the last post I posted probably got about 4 to 5 million impressions, a load of clicks, a load of follows, a load of likes, all the good stuff really in terms of helping the channel grow. Now, when I post anything, what is, let's say, finance related or macroeconomic related, then posts get suppressed to around about 100,000 impressions, and obviously very minimal likes, shares, saves, etc. Now, I'm fully aware that it might not necessarily be the platform to be talking about it, but I do think I probably have one of the largest macroeconomics Instagram pages out there at the moment. And yesterday I thought I would post something what was quite funny, what was just in relation to Trump and China. And it was kind of like a poker match where Trump is basically saying that he's going all in, and then China calls him, and then he just says like he folds. And and the thing is, I still find it pretty funny at the moment, but from posting that post I have received a significant amount of comments and a shared load of direct messages basically explaining the reasons why they're leaving the page, and they feel like they need to give me 3 pages of context of why they're leaving the page because I'm talking about China propaganda and blah 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 blah. Now, the thing is, the reason why I want to talk about it is because I just found the psychology around it incredibly interesting, and I didn't really think that many people would be taking it so seriously, but a lot of people did take it very seriously. And again, I've apologized for a few people basically saying that I didn't really mean to offend you, and obviously then people have blocked me, but they've made themselves incredibly aware of their feelings and emotion by obviously leaving it on Instagram and coming over to YouTube, leaving it on the comment section, unsubscribing, blah 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 blah. Now the reason why I find it incredibly interesting is because that post only had roughly about 600,000, 700,000 impressions, what is not really that much, to be honest. But the reason why I want to talk about it is because if you are a politician and you are trying to, let's say, broadcast a message, and you need to broadcast it to 330 million or 340 million people, you need to make sure the message is incredibly simple, that somebody with 2 left feet can fully understand what you're about to say. Because if it's not simple and it's not digestible, a lot of people miss it. And this is the thing. I mean, I was kind of having a conversation today with somebody basically just explaining, like, if you take the average IQ of somebody, let's say in the United States or in the world or whatever, and then you think that is the average. So you've got 50% of people who are below average. So you really need to make sure that your messaging and how you communicate is incredibly clear. Now, obviously, me talking about Trump and China, I understand that it can be a little bit of a sensitive subject for some people, just in relation to, obviously, job security, wages, price increases, etc. It's a very scary time, right? I mean, especially when you see every single headline. And the whole idea around my thesis is just in relation to money flows and why you shouldn't necessarily be paying attention to news and the headlines, and you should really be looking at price action, because the price action really shows you the news, because you can really see who is struggling from a financial perspective and who is forced to sell and liquidate, let's say, assets like gold or treasury bonds, etc. I mean, the price action yesterday I just found incredibly interesting. I mean, let me just touch on this. Like, basically the 10-year treasury note started to go down, meaning that a lot of people were flooding into treasury bills. Now, towards the middle of the day, we saw that gold started to get sold off significantly, and that a lot of people started to sell off the Treasury bond as well. Now, I kind of anticipated this happening, and I just put on a little bet, and I did exceptionally well. When I say a bet, I mean I basically just went short aggressively, like incredibly aggressively on gold. And if you fast forward about 2 or 3 videos ago, I was kind of talking about why I don't really like gold. Now, again, it's only down 3 or 4%, but the reason why I'm talking about it is because I could see the stress. I could see the stress in China in regards to the CNY, CNH spread. And again, I am not looking at the news. I do not watch TV. I have not watched TV in 12, 13 years. So I get all my information from price action. So when I started to see this stress started to expand in terms of the spread, I thought, you know what, I'll just take a little bit of a gamble. I will put on this short position. And now this is just me. I am not a trader. I'm more of a longer term investor, but I much prefer to get the direction of a trend correct, what ultimately allows me to scale into positions and scale out of positions dependent on specific time frames. And them time frames are normally around a year to 2 years. But obviously I saw that spread started to break out, and I just thought it'd be quite interesting to put the short on. Now, as a result, I made about 60-70% gain yesterday just on that short position. But this is another thing. It's like everyone is consuming the news and not necessarily looking at price action. And that is what I kind of want to educate people about, just in relation to looking at the data, looking at money flows, not necessarily looking at, because the headlines are telling you one side of the story, and they are making you want, or they're making you feel a certain emotion, what ultimately drives a certain action. And that is the whole idea around the news, and obviously different types of posts. And this is the thing what I was receiving a hell of a lot yesterday, just in relation to propaganda. Now, if you look at the definition of propaganda, it mainly just talks about how different types of, let's say, entities or different types of groups would mainly just push one specific narrative. Now there's a book what I read a couple of years ago. I can't remember the book name, but when I find the book name, I'll put it on the screen. I'll put it on the screen now so you can kind of see it. But it's basically talking about seeing things from other people's points of view, and it just all talks about wearing different types of hats. So, for example, it's like if there's like 6 coloured hats, and I can't really remember off the top of my head, but basically it's just like putting yourself in the other person's shoes. And this is going back to, let's say, propaganda, or going back to different types of posts. Like, everybody is going to be talking about one side of the coin, but it's your job as an investor. And obviously, let's say if you are in macroeconomics as well, is trying to assess what are you being told and what could be potentially going on behind the scenes in terms of money flow, etc., etc., etc. What allows you to have a edge, so you can make even more money. And that is the whole idea of the game. Now, just in relation to these hats, the reason why I think it's very important is because rather than just saying something is propaganda, you want to be putting yourself in the situation of the other competitor. So ultimately, what you want to be doing is putting yourself in the other person's shoes, so you can feel like them, you can see like them, and ultimately you can take actions like them, or you can anticipate their actions. And that is the whole idea in terms of anticipating the anticipation of others. And this goes into other deeper areas, such as obviously the stock market, traders, investors, because ultimately you want to be anticipating the anticipation of others, and obviously getting positioned before other people figure it out. And that is the whole idea on how you make money. Now, obviously trading and investing is a very, very, very intellectual game, and you are trying to outcompete people in terms of information, in terms of intellect, to obviously make a lot of money. So it's a very intellectual exercise. And ultimately, a lot of these price movements, especially on the short term, are very much driven based on emotion and price action. And again, I can see this in my comments, I can see this in the DMs. I post anything in relation to China, there's so many people who get very, very angry about it. If I post anything in relation to, let's say, Trump, there's also a hell of a lot of people who get very, very angry about it. But the China comment was very, very fascinating, because I haven't really posted anything in relation to China, let's say, winning or joking about winning. But again, this to me just highlights what the current events are all about, and that is driving as much noise, as much uncertainty, as much, let's say, misunderstanding of what is currently going on in markets. Is he winning? Is he not winning? Is he losing? Etc. To basically destabilize a lot of these other countries, what makes them liquidate their assets, what ultimately pushes them back into US Treasury bills, what allows the United States government to basically refinance $36 trillion of debt at very cheap, desirable rates. And obviously they can build and manufacture in the United States a lot easier and more effectively. But again, like I was saying, the psychology around all of this I just found incredibly, incredibly interesting, because a lot of people can't even think. You know, I know I've said this in my previous videos, but a lot of people can't even see past the word China, Trump, red or blue or whatever, that they just don't have the ability to be able to think. And I think it's just a very telling sign just where we are from a society perspective. Now, a lot of people wanted to know my views on what was currently going on, obviously with that meme, and a lot of people messaging me and saying, oh, can you do a YouTube video about it? I mean, again, it's getting into drama, right? It's getting into drama, headlines, etc. You don't want to be getting caught up in the drama, the headlines, the clickbait, etc. You want to have clarity in your thinking. And the easiest way for me to kind of give you a analogy just in relation to how I assess all of this is basically this. Just imagine that you are in the ocean, and the ocean is very, very violent. There's massive waves, it's dark, it's cold, and the only thing you have control over in that moment is your mind. And you have the ability to do one or two things, right? You can panic, you can get emotional, or you can stay calm, and you can understand that you have no control over the waves. You have no control of the environment. The environment is going to do its thing, and it's up to you to be able to control your mind to make sure that you do not get shaken by these outside factors. And that is how I currently assess it. Now, in the next hour or so, next 2 hours, the waves might obviously die down and the water is all calm again. And that is currently how I see the news and how I kind of digest information. It's just, okay, well, this is like a big wave, what is coming in terms of information. There's going to be a lot of noise. But okay, so what do they want me to understand? Okay, well, that is very, very interesting. They want me to feel and understand things from this perspective. But what about this perspective? And again, this just touches on in terms of building real clarity around theses, around obviously investments, around price action, etc. You want to have clarity in your thinking, because this is what will give you an edge compared to the majority of people. Like, I've probably mentioned this a few times, but you don't necessarily want to be thinking like the 95% of people, because by thinking like the 95% of people, you will not make money. You need the ability to be able to think very, very differently and consume information very, very differently, because this is what will give you an edge over time. And if you agree with absolutely everybody on every single point what is being made, you are probably going to lose money, because in herd mentality, when it comes to price action, when it comes to emotion, people make very, very, very different decisions, especially in groups, and especially when a lot of people are very emotionally driven. You want to be stepping back. You want to be stripping back that emotion, what ultimately gives you clarity in terms of your positions and ultimately your investments. Because ultimately, creative thinking is what builds a real edge. And following the same patterns over and over and over again, you're going to get the same results over and over and over again. So you need the ability to be able to consume the information, assess with what the information is telling you, and then obviously make a assessment based on that information. A majority of people take that information and just take that information as gospel. Basically, oh, he said X, Y, and Z, so he must be saying X, Y, and Z. They don't necessarily look at correlations in price action. They don't really look at things from a data perspective. They mainly just take things from face value. And this is the whole relation in terms of Trump and the Fed. And like I was saying in my previous videos, I think it's absolute nonsense. I think it's an absolute circus. But again, I mean, people are messaging me on a 5-minute intervals like, oh, Trump said this about the Fed. Oh my God, what does that mean for the Fed? Oh my God, the Fed needs to cut rates. And I'm just like, the Fed controls the short end. It doesn't control the long end. The long end is where the game is being played. It's where the sovereigns are playing. It's where the large money managers and institutions are playing. They are not playing in the circus on CNBC and all these other different types of news outlets. They are seeing things in money flows, and this is the reason why a lot of retail traders get very, very emotional and lose 90% of their money within 90 days. And this is another thing as well, especially when it comes to trading. I have he's not really a friend, he's more like an acquaintance, but I got introduced to somebody in Dubai who was doing trading signals for a large community. He runs one of the largest Forex signal community, basically on Telegram and Discord. And he was basically just saying to me that 90% of traders lose 90% of their money within 90 days. And he was just explaining that he tells one side of the community one, let's say, buy or sell signal, and the other side of the community a sell signal, and he will lose 50% of his members over, let's say, a 3-month basis. But his business is in marketing the dream in terms of being a Forex trader, in terms of quick wins, quick money, etc. And the thing is, I don't find it morally, I just don't find it morally right in terms of what he's currently doing. But again, he was saying that he's doing 200-300 grand a month just on that membership community, plus sponsorships, plus everything else in between. So again, it's like there's a lot of there's a lot of psychology and emotion, especially when it comes to making money quickly. Everything else, and this is the thing, it's like having clarity and the ability to be able to think for yourself, because you do not want to be given a fish. You want to learn how to fish. And this is the whole idea of what I want to talk about more, is just in relation to having the ability to be able to think, because that thinking will make you be able to craft your theses incredibly accurately and not necessarily be swayed by new price information, because you have a good understanding of what you own and obviously why you own it. And this is the whole idea. I mean, I'm getting questions at the moment just in relation to plays. Oh, what's the next play for tomorrow? Should I be buying this? Should I be going long here? Should I be doing this? And the thing is, I don't really talk about it because I don't want to be swayed by other people's emotions, what ultimately means that I am managing other people's emotions. And this is what majority of financial advisors do. And this is what majority of financial advisors are doing. They always just kind of, what were your goals for the last 5 years? And the market stopped. Okay, well, don't go out of the market because blah. But again, everyone has their incentives aligned differently, because I've said this before, but again, a majority of financial advisors are typically incentivized for you to be in the market because that is where their fees come from. And they are mainly just managing your emotion when it comes to price action. So when the market goes down, they don't want their clients to sell, because when their clients sell, obviously that affects their fees, that affects a lot of other different moving parts in their business. So it's in the best interest of them and the best interest of you as the client to basically stay in the market, because the same quotes get told over and over and over again. What is time in the market beats timing the market, and everyone talks about it. Everyone says it, and this is the whole thing with YouTube finance and just in general, is that majority of people just pick out headlines and just say Trump said this, the Fed said this, and this is what I'm doing. And basically what I'm doing is I'm dollar cost averaging into the S&P 500. I'm going to do that for the next 20 years, blah, 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 blah. And everyone's like, oh my God, that's such a great idea. And granted, that can be a great idea for the vast majority of people. But again, I do not want normal results. I want exceptional results. So for me, I want exceptional results. And the only way to get exceptional results is to be able to have clarity how you think. And again, have I made mistakes? Absolutely. Have I lost a lot of money? Absolutely. Have I made a lot of money? Absolutely. You really want to be taking more wins than losses, and that's the whole idea of the game. And even if you are taking more losses, you just want to make sure that them losses are minimal and that your wins are larger than your losses. And that is the whole idea around trading and investing. And like I was saying to you before in my previous videos, I don't do any trading. I mainly do long-term investing when it comes to obviously buying and holding, and I just like to get the direction correct. And again, going back to my thesis, I think I am correct on the direction. Obviously, it's volatile, there's a lot of noise, a lot of news, etc. And going back to that whole analogy in relation to being in the ocean, I see the news as the ocean. The ocean is incredibly violent at the moment, but the only people who can kind of control their emotion is if they have clarity in how they think. Because again, it's incredibly, incredibly noisy, and majority of people get swayed by the next headline, by what the market is doing in the next 10 minutes. By the last green candle, by the last red candle, etc. And you just want to be getting the direction right. Ultimately, you want to be getting the direction right, because that is where you are going to be making the most amount of money over the longer term. And yeah, just going back to books, I'll put that book on the screen now just in relation to the hats. And also, I mentioned it before, but The Courage to be Disliked really helps you get clarity in terms of how you think. Because I would say that is the biggest part of the game in terms of mastering your own emotions and clarity in terms of thinking. And all this technical analysis and technical this and technical that, I mean, yeah, it's great. But yeah, the technical analysis is great, and this and that, Fibonacci retracements and head and shoulders and bull flag, bear flag, all this nonsense. I mean, I'm not saying it's nonsense. I'm just saying that majority of people get shaken out of positions based on their own emotion and thinking. They don't really have a strategy. And when you have a strategy, when you start to document your own trades and when you start to document your own positions, you have more clarity in terms of what you own and why you own it. And this is what I always want to reiterate. It's about understanding how to fish, not necessarily be given a fish, because you don't understand what you own and why you own it, because that is when you become more and more emotional, because you are constantly messaging people basically saying, oh, why has it gone down? Oh, why has it gone up? Oh, Trump said this, the Fed said this. I mean, who cares? I mean, you really need to be looking at price action and ultimately looking at the fundamentals of the business, of the market, and figuring out, okay, well, where things are going to be moving, and can I get positioned before things start to move there? And that is how you make a significant amount of money, is by anticipating the anticipation of others. Now, what I'll do now is I'll just put on an interview on the screen, just in relation to a politician who was from the UK. And he's talking about the prices of energy, etc. And I find it incredibly interesting, just the psychology and messaging and how it's packaged together, because he doesn't even acknowledge the other side of the argument. And this is the whole idea when it comes to investing, when it comes to trading, is you want to be building a full picture, because this is how you get clarity, again, in your thinking and how you understand market dynamics and how you understand price action. So let me just play this video now.
Energy companies in this country are taxed at 78% on energy profits. That pushes up prices too.
No, that's wrong. Look,
it's not 78%?
It is 78%, but it's not incredible.
Whereas obviously regular corporate tax is 25%.
It's really important to make this point. Oil and gas is set, the price of oil and gas is set on the international market. The reason why...
That's the raw commodity price, in the same way that the prices of batteries is set on the raw, the raw commodity price.
It's not set by the tax rate on UK companies, is what I'm saying. It's set by the global price. You see,
I understand that, but you're saying that tax rates don't impact pricing?
I'm saying that in relation to oil and gas, they don't, because the truth is that the price for our oil and gas is set internationally. And let me explain. Let me just, if you just let me make the point. Why did prices go through the roof when Russia invaded Ukraine? Right, well, our prices went through the roof, even though we imported a very small amount from Russia. That's because whether the gas was coming from the North Sea or internationally, it was priced on the international market. That's why we're in the grip of fossil fuel markets controlled by others, petrostates, dictators. And that wasn't about the UK tax rate. The UK tax rate could have been cut or higher, and it wouldn't have made an impact.
That's a separate point.
Yeah.
The floating price of commodities is a legitimate but separate point. Another point for why this country has unbelievably high energy prices is that we tax our energy companies.
No, you're wrong. I'm really sorry, but you're wrong about that because the price is set internationally. I'm really sorry, but that's not correct.
OK, well, let's put commodities aside. If you increase taxes on supermarkets to 78%...
It depends whether it's...
If you increase taxes on supermarkets to 78%, what would happen to the price of food?
It depends.
What would happen to the price of food?
It depends whether it's a domestic market where the price is set domestically.
Depend. This is a globally unquestionable factor about economics. You're right that your point also applies. You can't flatly deny my point.
I am denying your point when it comes to the question of these internationally set prices. That's the point I'm making.
If you lowered the tax of 78% on energy companies to the regular...
On oil and gas companies, it wouldn't make a difference to the price. In fact...
Yes, it would.
I'm afraid it wouldn't because the point is that the price is set internationally.
But there are lots of things that factor into the price that we pay. The lots of supply chain costs you've mentioned yourself. This is a huge cost in the supply chain.
So, so as you can see, he is basically talking about the cost of energy. And obviously the guy who's interviewing him basically says, do you think the reason why the cost of energy is significantly high is because the UK government taxes these energy companies at 80% of their net profits, etc. And don't you think that these energy companies push this onto consumers? And I would massively argue that this is absolutely the case. But he is in so much denial about it, and he is obviously talking about the raw cost of oil, what is obviously set globally. And it's not necessarily set globally. I mean, this is another thing as well. It's like if you look at OPEC and you look at Trump, I mean, when Trump did this tariff day or whatever it was called, look what OPEC said as well. OPEC basically said that they are going to increase production significantly on the same day Trump said these tariffs. And these are the people who basically dictate oil prices globally. Now, obviously, there's probably been a deal between OPEC and Trump just in relation to getting the cost of oil down. Now, I have discussed in multiple videos why I think Trump is currently trying to bring the cost of oil down, and I do think he will succeed in it. I do think he'll probably get the cost of oil around $55 a barrel or $50 a barrel. But just going back to this politician in the UK, the reason why I find it incredibly, incredibly fascinating is because he doesn't even acknowledge the tax on these energy companies. He's basically blaming the cost of energy on Putin and Russia. And again, this is the narrative what is being driven home for the past couple of months, if not the past 2 or 3 years, just in relation to oil prices. The reason why the oil prices are high is because of Russia. And even though that might be true to a certain extent, now what you want to be doing is obviously taking that snippet, what he's talking about, just in relation to the cost of oil, and the reason why the cost of oil is significantly high is to do with Russia. Okay, well, that is the narrative. That is what is being pushed heavily. He doesn't even acknowledge that the taxes could be obviously impacting the cost of energy in the UK. I mean, I'll just put on the screen now just the cost of energy in the UK in relation to every other European country, and it is absolutely insane, just the cost of energy in the UK. And a lot of this is to do with a lot of, you know what, I'm not even going to get into all of that, but basically, if we take his statement just in relation to Russia and the cost of oil, now, what you want to be doing as an investor is basically assessing how accurate is that piece of information and the reasons why you could be wrong and the reasons why you could be right. And again, wearing them hats. Why is he right and why is he wrong? And when you start to do that, that gives you a significant advantage in terms of assessing pieces of information, what gives you more clarity in terms of how you assess price action, how you assess pieces of information, what ultimately will give you better clarity in regards to investments. So again, going back to his statement, Russia is the cause of oil going up. Now you might have other factors. What could be OPEC? So you want to be looking at OPEC meeting minutes. You want to be looking at what OPEC are currently saying and why are they currently saying that, and what influence OPEC could be having on the rest of the world. Now, what you want to be doing as well is assessing other different countries what produce high amounts of oil and what could be their incentive in terms of increasing production or restricting supply, because ultimately all of that has a massive role in the underlying cost of energy. And ultimately as well, so does legislation and taxation in regards to energy and the different types of movements of why specific governments might not necessarily be that in favour of different types of energy sources. So again, that all affects the energy cost and the price of energy in specific jurisdictions and obviously different types of countries. But again, there's a lot of complexity to it, but just taking that one snippet of the reason why the oil is high is because of Russia, everyone can understand that very, very quickly and very, very instantly. But again, going back to what I was saying before, just in relation to people take them sound bites because they are consuming news on 5-second intervals, 10-second intervals, and they don't have the ability to be able to think differently or see the bigger picture. And I'm not necessarily saying that Russia is not necessarily the cause of a higher oil price. Obviously, wars do affect oil prices, because to fund a war and to obviously go to war, you need a lot of oil. So that's why you can have these supply shocks in demand and supply, obviously when wars start to escalate. But again, just taking a blanket statement and just thinking, oh yeah, well the reason why the cost of oil is significantly higher is purely because of Russia, I think is a little bit naive, and I think it just requires a little bit more clarity in terms of how people assess information. So hopefully this video has been informative, and it can kind of give you some understanding of why understanding emotion, thinking, clarity, just everything when it comes to your brain is so incredibly important, especially when it comes to investing, trading, and not just that, just in general life anyway. You want to be taking the emotion out of it, because when you take the emotion out of different types of situations and you start to think things through from a, let's say, more of a logical perspective, and you take the emotion out of it, you can have incredibly good results when you do that. And again, majority of people don't do it. They see the headline, they get emotional, they write the comments, they leave the DM, they go through the entire emotion, and they feel great at the end of it, because obviously they've seen the headline, they've wrote about it. Oh, he shouldn't be doing that, he should be fired. Oh my god, I'm unfollowed. And then obviously they feel a little bit better. But again, I mean, especially when you run such a large page like I do, or when you have such a large community, you need to also take into consideration how people might be feeling at specific types of times. I mean, obviously some people might be having a lot of problems, and I'm not necessarily saying that I don't have problems. I have a significant amount of problems. I just don't document them online. And so do a lot of other people. People might be seeing my posts when they're coming home. They've just been fired because of tariffs, and I understand it. I understand why that would be very, very emotional. And you can have a whole list of things what can obviously be going on. But anyway, I am just trying to make things humorous and obviously make people smile a little bit more, because obviously if we're not smiling, we're all crying. So so that is the idea behind the memes. But anyway, to the 4 people who keep on supporting me, and most importantly laugh at my memes, I hope you're having a lovely day, and take care. Bye bye.